Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to check out another of the brand new Beasts of the Mesozoic figures that are coming out. This time we again have an opportunity to take a look at a figure a little bit early. I want to say a huge thank you to David Silva, who was awesome enough to give me this figure a little bit earlier than the actual shipping date so that I could get a review up here on the channel for you guys. And of course, let you know that the figure is beautiful, I can already tell that, but also kind of hype you up for the release of this figure. And you can see that this one is actually in 1/18th scale. You see the scale down there, and you can also see that it is a Protoceratops. It is Protoceratops andrewsi, and that's very interesting because there's actually a totally different species of Protoceratops in this line, which we will also be reviewing here on the channel very soon. This is the same species that was released prior in this line in 1/6 scale, so a much, much larger size than what we have here on this release. But you can see as far as the packaging goes, I think the packaging is actually really cool. Very different from your usual Beasts of the Mesozoic packaging, which in my opinion is kind of a nice way to mix things up and give us something a little bit different, but also because the figure's so small, it makes sense to have it in such a smaller packaging. You've got the really nice image there of the Protoceratops up there. Of course, the window area for us to see the Protoceratops. And then here on the back, you've got an image that shows off all of the different figures that are in this scale that are currently available, or will be available anyway, and are currently available for pre-order, but haven't actually released quite yet, but will be releasing very, very soon. And then up there at the top of the box shows off again the pretty much like a card, and you can cut it out to have yourself own a little card here of the Protoceratops, which looks really cool. And what I like about this as well is the fact that the packaging, I believe David recently promoted it as collector friendly, which it absolutely is, because you can just basically pull this off, which then will allow you to release the Protoceratops from the packaging so you can check it out and, you know, move it around and all that fun stuff, but then return it back to the packaging. So let's go ahead, pop this out of the package right now and do just that. And just basically to kind of give you an example of what I was talking about, you can slide the cardboard out here, the back, and that allows you to get to the Protoceratops in the packaging, but then put it back down to completely, again, seal everything up like it originally was. So that's a really cool way to be able to access your Protoceratops without destroying the packaging. But again, we could pull this out, and we now have the Protoceratops. And what's interesting about doing it this way is we don't actually have a tail or anything to connect. The tail's already connected, unlike the larger figures that are currently out. And then here we have a little slip as far as some Ceratopsian instructions, basically showing how you can connect the figure to the base as well as the legs and all of that fun stuff. Probably very important to read if you are not familiar with these Beasts of the Mesozoic figures. And then we again have the base, and the base is just basically a nice little clear plastic base, and you can see that we do have the Beasts of the Mesozoic logo on the base, which I do really quite like. We've also got ourselves the legs of the Protoceratops, so you can switch these out for the legs that are currently on the figure to, again, alter the display of the figure. And then we have our Protoceratops itself, and look at how adorably small it is compared to the older one, the previously released much larger version. It is so small, like it can completely almost fit entirely in my hand. Not quite, a little bit bigger, but I mean, it can sit in my hand, but I can't close my hand to completely conceal it. But it still looks really neat. David definitely did a fantastic job on what I can see so far, but the only way to truly tell how nice this is with a closer look, so let's do that right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of the Protoceratops, you can straight away see how beautiful the actual texturing is to the skin. Super nice looking detailing, really popping on the sculpt, really crisp detail like you usually find on the Beasts of the Mesozoic figures. On top of that, you have that really nice looking head sculpt overall that perfectly replicates a Protoceratops. You can see as you lead up here into the frill, again, all of the detail continues to look really, really nice. And on top of the fantastic sculpt and detail, you have some beautiful paintwork on this. I actually may like the paintwork of this one even better than the larger version. I just feel like some of the tones of color, like I like that reddish brown back here, it just looks really cool. But again, you can see that we basically have this really nice tone of a brown that runs through quite a bit of the face of the Protoceratops. And we also have a black that sort of outlines that brown, and then a nice kind of a creamy color here. But what's cool about the creamy color is it sort of looks like an off-white, but at the same time, if you get nice and close, you can kind of see like some elements of pinks in there. So it looks like maybe it was like a pink wash, or maybe it was a pink and then they kind of dry brushed some lighter coloration over it. It looks really cool. You can also see that the little bump up here on the snout of our Protoceratops is kind of like an off-white. A little hard to see exactly what color it is. Definitely a very small aspect to the figure, but it definitely looks like an off-white. We've got some beautifully painted eyes with a blue and a black pupil. You can see another spot of that creamy color right there, as well as back here. You've got the spike here on the side of the Protoceratops painted with a black. That kind of black outlining leads to that area, so that looks really cool as well. And then as you lead back up here to the frill, you can again see quite a bit of different coloration and designing going on. We of course have that primary brown color, but you can also see some creamy types of coloration like pinkish tones, as well as greenish tones, and then of course the black that kind of designs through. Very, very cool looking coloration, and pretty much identical, I would say, to the much larger version of the Protoceratops. You've also got the bumps that kind of run around the frill, nicely painted with a dark brown as well, which looks really nice. And you can see again some beautiful paintwork. You've got like a lighter kind of a pinkish tone that pops through some of the scales and stuff in certain areas of the head sculpt. You can even see it over here on the opposing side. Like, they've done a really good job of applying the paintwork in a way that it looks really realistic. They also seem to have dry brushed like a darker tone over quite a few different areas of the face, really highlighting that coloration, almost like a dark gray they've kind of dry brushed over it. And you can also see the eye placement over here is perfect, just like we saw on the initial side. And there's also a beautiful gloss coat to the eye of the figure. The mouth and jaw, of course, is articulated. You can open that very nicely. We have some beautiful tones of pink there on the inside of the mouth of our Protoceratops, and that also almost seems to have like a little bit of a glossy look to it. It's a little hard to tell truly because it is a very small mouth, but definitely looks like there might be a glossy look in there, and that jaw articulates very nicely. As you move back here into the neck region, you can again see more really nice scale detail as per usual. Same deal here for the back of the frill of our Protoceratops. And you can also see that we have a really nice light brown here for the back of the frill, but we also again have that kind of off-white mixed with a pinkish tone, if my camera would focus on it. That kind of, wow, there we go. That kind of stripes up and then leads down here and runs along the spinal column of the Protoceratops. You can also see like some darker, almost like a reddish dry brushing, like almost like a reddish brown dry brushing right there. So just a little bit of extra color variation. And you can see as we move back along the spinal column of the Protoceratops, we have some nice ridges, very, very small ridges, almost like osteoderms that run along the spinal column of the Protoceratops. And you can also see again, the paintwork looks incredibly nice on this. For how small this was, I was really wondering how natural the paintwork would look on it, but it really isn't applied, honestly, perfectly. Like, it does not look like paint on a figure, and that's kind of what I was worried about when it comes to something so small. It actually looks straight up like body color, which I really love. And you can also again see through the course of the body, we have all sorts of really cool designs with the different variations of browns, pinks, off-whites, and blacks that just sort of like design all over the place on this Protoceratops. As you move down here into the front leg, you can see some nice muscle definition. Also a few osteoderms poking up here the further up into the front leg you get. And then as you move down, you've got the really nice leg sculpt, really nice scale detail, as well as a beautiful foot sculpt. And look at how perfectly painted that is. Really nicely sculpted out toes and black nails with a nice shine to them, so they have a nice gloss coat. And again, that is incredibly small. Look at it sitting on my finger. That is honestly so impressive. As you move back up here into the stomach region, you can again see all sorts of beautiful, beautiful looking scale detail, incredibly crisp scale detail that is honestly abundant through the entire figure. And then moving back into the thigh, you've got the musculature of the thigh and calf region, as well as again that kind of reddish brown that's been nicely applied to this area, just applying a little more extra color variation to the figure. And then as you move down, you can again see that really nice leg sculpt and foot sculpt for the rear leg. Beautifully painted nails, yet again, zero sloppiness on this figure, period. Like, the beasts of the Mesozoic figures are always incredibly well done when it comes to the sculpt and paint, but this is easily the smallest beast of the Mesozoic figure I've ever seen, so it's super impressive to see no matter how small the figure is, the detailing and paintwork is always through the roof. And then as you lead out into the tail, you can see more variation of color. The ridges that run along the spinal column get a little bit larger, I would say, out here on the tail. And then we transition from that same type of scaling we have through the entire body for the most part to a little bit of a different look for the scaling as we lead out here into the tail. And you can also see the tail ends with a nice black tip, and then type of scale detail here runs down on the underside of our Protoceratops, and you can see a very different look to the skin texture and scale detail here on the underside of the Protoceratops, which also looks really cool. You've also got the throat there on the underside, and you can even see color variation like on the underside. They always do such a great job of applying the paint in such a realistic way that it really looks very, very lifelike. And then looking at the opposing side, you can again see that pretty much everything looks the same as it did on the initial side. Really cool looking, and definitely one of the most beautiful Protoceratops figures that I have in my collection, and definitely one of the smallest, there is no doubt about that. But honestly, it is just mind-blowing how good the sculpt of this is, as well as the paintwork for something so small. That is just crazy. And actually, to show you the articulation, since this figure is so small, I don't think it would hurt to do it up here. But again, we do have the jaw articulation like we just saw a little bit ago. We also have neck articulation, so we've got one nice joint right there, which allows some very nice posability with our Protoceratops. You can see we can move the neck down, you can move it up, left, right, all over the place, and that seems to work really nicely. We also have the midsection articulation like you usually find on these figures, which also works nicely. You can go up and down as well. And then you have the articulation right here in the leg, as well as the elbow articulation, which is the same on both sides, of course. And then you have the hip articulation, which can move very nicely forward and back. And then the knee articulation, which also works quite nicely. And then as we lead back up to the tail, we've got the ability to move the tail left and right, as well as up, down, and yes, we can absolutely swivel the tail as well. So quite a bit of articulation for something so small, and it all seems to work perfectly. Really smooth operation of the articulated joints, and again, just making the figure even more incredible. And then you've got the alternate legs, which as well look really, really nice. You've got some beautifully sculpted toes, nicely painted nails, nice paintwork in general through the legs, and these legs are much more kind of upright and, straight up, where the other legs are crouched a little bit, so it just kind of allows you to position your Protoceratops a little bit more upright, and I would imagine you probably just pull this off. Yep, so there goes the leg off, and then you would take the other leg and just push this in here, and there we go. We now have the much taller leg applied to our Protoceratops to allow you to have even more display options with your figure. As far as applying your Protoceratops to the base, you can see there's a little hole on the bottom of the foot, and you've got a little peg on the base, so you just basically have to line those up, push that foot down onto the base, and if I can get my camera in a little bit of a better position, you can now, position your Protoceratops pretty much any way you would like, and it allows all sorts of creativity and positioning for the Protoceratops overall. So for a size, and again, I've been stressing how small it is, for a length, you are looking at about 4¼ inches or around 10.5 centimeters. And then for a height to the top of the frill, a hair over 2 inches or 5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our Protoceratops, and you can really see how small, yet adorably awesome, these new 1/18 scale versions of these figures are. Definitely really small. But for another comparison, there is a Captives Sinoceratops and a Mattel Mini Tyrannosaurus Rex, and we know these figures are very small. If you are familiar with those lines, you can definitely tell how small the Protoceratops from the Beasts of the Mesozoic here is, and how incredible it is to have such beautiful, such precise paintwork and incredible articulation on something this small. I feel like this comparison right here might be the most impressive comparison that I can give this figure. But if you are interested for another very interesting comparison, there is our 1/18 scale Protoceratops next to our 1/6 scale Protoceratops from the Beasts of the Mesozoic line, and you can really see a huge difference in size between the two, but you can also see how incredibly good of a job they did in replicating the paint job of the larger one on the smaller one. It's actually really crazy. Like, just looking at the designs, like, they're almost spot on both figures. That is super, super impressive. But again, This shows you the variety available in the beasts of the Mesozoic line, but also again shows you just how small this newest version of the Protoceratops is. And of course, I will be giving you more size comparisons as we review the rest of the 1/18th scale figures, but I feel like as far as this figure goes, those are probably the best comparisons I could give you currently. So this brand new 1/18th scale Beasts of the Mesozoic Ceratopsian series Protoceratops is just about as beautiful as the larger version. Again, it is an incredibly nice, very highly detailed release from the Beasts of the Mesozoic line, and looking at this next to the larger one, like, all of the detail that I see in the larger one is pretty much the exact same detail that I see in the smaller one. So it's pretty crazy that they're able to cram so much fantastic detailing on something so much smaller than the original version. And the fact that they look pretty much exactly the same is incredibly cool. And you can also potentially use the 1/18th scale version as maybe like a younger version of the 1/6 scale version, even though I guess the anatomy would be a little bit different, but I feel like it looks really cool next to the larger one. But again, the detailing of this figure for being so small is mind-blowing. The paintwork as well is so good because it looks pretty much exactly like the larger one at a much smaller size. So if you wanted to own the larger Protoceratops, but maybe it was just a little bit too big, maybe you didn't have the funds to grab it at the time, whatever the case may be, you can now own that same figure at a much smaller size, which is awesome, and giving even more people the opportunity to enter some Beasts of the Mesozoic into their collection. And again, all of the paintwork is so well done as far as the application goes. Like, it looks straight up just as nice as far as the application as the larger figure did. And I feel like it would have been so much easier to paint the larger one and have it look natural. But they've done a great job of doing exactly that with the smaller version. Again, all of the paint on this looks exactly like body color, not paint on a figure. And for being so small, I really feel like that might be one of the most impressive aspects of the figure overall. And then, of course, you have some beautiful articulation, which works very nicely, allowing numerous different poses and display options for your Protoceratops. And on top of that, you have a really cool base that you can apply the Protoceratops to, which even furthers the amount of display options for the figure and allowing you to kind of give it rearing up poses and stuff and all sorts of dynamic positioning that you otherwise probably wouldn't be able to achieve as easily. So definitely another fantastic release from the Beasts of the Mesozoic, and I can't wait to review the rest of these figures and get the Velociraptor in specifically to display next to this and kind of see how awesome they look together. So if you are interested in picking this up, I will include a link in the description to the Beasts of the Mesozoic website right now where you can pre-order this. Again, as you can see, if I have it here, that means it's coming out very soon, so make sure you get that pre-order in so it ships to you right away, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.